Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I entered the gold industry and began my tenure as CEO of the World Gold Council in early 2019. I came from an investment banking and hedge fund career, largely focused on interest rates and foreign exchange. During the first few months of my tenure, I could not help but compare the global gold market to the markets in which I had spent a long 35 years. And I noticed 5 things. Firstly, the interest rate and FX markets I left had, in their prior decade, introduced fundamental changes, which, amongst other improvements, both increased transparency and decreased the credit risks participants faced. This made it easier for buyers and sellers to find the best market price and encourage wider and more active participation. These markets have never looked back. These positive changes had been made because the interest rates and FX markets had found themselves in the crosshairs of financial regulators post the 2008 crisis and had taken the very wise decision to self-reform and not have draconian measures imposed upon them by a frustrated regulator. These changes have been largely driven by the Fixed Income, Currency and Commodity Markets Standards Board, quite a mouthful, or easier, FMSB, a body established under the auspice of the Bank of England, charged with the reform of the function, practices and standards of all fixed income, currency and commodity markets. Over the last 2 years, the gold trading markets have undergone a similar process of self-examination and introspection and set in train an inclusive reform process that will implement similar improvements. In this context, I have chaired the FMSB's Precious Metals Working Group, a body composed of a very broad set of OTC gold market stakeholders, including all the major bullion banks and the LBMA, charged with improving the gold trading markets. We have made great strides, most recently making the important decision to draft a spotlight review to be published by the FMSB, recommending moving the market from an opaque bilateral system to a more transparent, semi-cleared model. It is hoped that these reforms lead to greater transparency, trust, and of course, participation going forward, lowering the barriers to institutional investment from which all participants in the gold market will quite obviously benefit. Secondly, I noticed that despite 35 years in rates, currencies, and commodity markets, I still knew very little about gold. I concluded my ignorance was not unique. And so, as a consequence, we have been making the case for gold and why it should form part of every balanced portfolio to institutional investors worldwide. The WGC now has teams in New York, London, Singapore, Mumbai, Shanghai, and Beijing, advising institutional investors and asset allocators working to make sure that the role of gold in an investment portfolio is fully understood. In this context, we have invested heavily in both digital and TV advertising to not only make the case for gold in portfolios, but also lay out the overwhelmingly positive and differentiated case for gold to counter the somewhat anti-gold advertising emanating from the cryptocurrency industry. These sales, education, and advertising programs, in conjunction with our previously mentioned work to lower barriers to entry, will no doubt help drive new demand for gold. Thirdly, I became aware of the lack of trust and understanding of gold at a retail level. 48% of retail participants actively considering making a gold investment cited trust barriers in both the gold products on offer to them and the providers they would buy from. Furthermore, 60% of those polled simply didn't understand the actual product on offer. Incidentally, the principal UK market regulator, the FCA, carries a statement on its own website warning the public that most gold sold online is, to quote their own phrase, a scam. And so, in response, after extensive industry consultation, the WGC launched the Retail Gold Investment Principles, or RGIPs. These new principles have been developed to enhance best practice in the retail sector and to increase trust in gold as an asset class. We introduced the RGIPs to India, where industry stakeholders came together to form a steering committee focused on drafting a market-wide code of conduct, and also to Germany, where the principles and supporting guidance for investors have already been distributed to many thousands of investors and dealers by the largest Landesbank. We're on the cusp of extending this rollout globally, with industry engagement underway in the US, Canada, Singapore, UK, and China. Coincident to this, we introduced a comprehensive guide to retail investment, the Retail Gold Investment Guidance, or RGIGs, that ensures novice investors are made fully aware of the wholesalers and retailers who have chosen to adopt and live the high standards of the RGIPs. In India, our second largest gold consuming market, we have also launched an emotionally evocative multimedia campaign, You Are Gold, to make gold jewelry relevant and attractive to millennials and Gen Z. You have seen our ads running on national TV channels, and we are very, very proud of them. Fourth, I noticed how vulnerable the gold mining industry was to the investor and consumer perceptions of responsibly sourced gold. I joined the WGC just as the Responsible Gold Mining Principles, or RGMPs, were launched, the first ever framework that articulates what constitutes responsible gold mining. It is vital for the industry to not only demonstrate how it is operating responsibly, but also the important role that responsible gold mining plays in contributing to social and economic development for communities and countries all over the world. Conformance with the RGMPs is now mandatory for WGC members, but it is an open standard that is suitable for all gold producers. I'm proud that a number of non-members have already committed to the RGMPs, and I hope to see further adoption. Further to this industry has such an important role to play in supporting responsible development. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are an important framework to understand where progress is required. Climate change is, of course, a very global challenge, but I'm delighted that the members of the World Gold Council have committed to report their positions and progress on climate-related risks in line with the recommendations of the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, or TCFD. This is an internationally recognized standard that helps investors and other stakeholders understand both the steps that companies are taking to reduce emissions, but also the potential impact of climate change on these businesses. This commitment has been unanimously supported across our membership and demonstrates the engagement and commitment to combating climate change. This is, of course, much work ahead of us, but I am encouraged by the opportunities to decarbonize the gold mining sector, as well as the important role that I believe gold will play in helping investors optimize their portfolios to be aligned with net zero. The gold mining's ESG commitment is crucial to enhancing trust, participation, and demand. And finally, the fifth. I noticed that the global industry appeared to have developed somewhat organically, with the resulting fragmentation frustrating many opportunities to work together and invest in the technologies crucial to enhancing transparency, trust, and understanding, all critically important to winning over the global retail and investment communities. And so in response, the WGC, working closely with the LBMA, has developed a vision for the global gold market, the Gold 247 plan, that is underpinned by the necessary technology investments. The key aspects of this vision are, firstly, gold supply integrity. Gold needs to have unimpeachable credentials. This is essential if we are to maintain the trust and confidence of consumers, investors, and regulators. Accessibility. Physical gold needs to be fully accessible 24/7, traded 24/7, and fully accessible through contemporary channels such as digital investment accounts and even simply one's iPhone. And lastly, fungible global markets. Local and regional gold markets need to be fully interoperable, raising the possibility of gold being used for a plethora of alternative uses, from collateralization to new sources of funding. And these are not simply aspirations. The World Gold Council, partnering closely with the LBMA, aims to direct significant capital to these three most important areas, investing in the entire gold market for the good and future of the entire gold market. Of course, the WGC and LBMA will only help drive execution on these critical technical goals with the broad backing of the industry. All stakeholders, all stakeholder groups have an opinion that must be heard. And so, in conclusion, I am proposing that the industry unifies for the first time perhaps and works towards a sustainable future by enhancing transparency, trust, accessibility, provenance, and uniform standards, all improvements that will give confidence to both the world's investors and regulators alike. All acts guaranteed to improve participation. If we unify, the future will be very bright for our industry. Thank you to the India Gold Conference organizers for the very kind invitation to speak today, and I very much look forward to an all in-person event in 2022. Thank you so much.